Move to the garden level by sundown, Evelyn, or just leave. The words, delivered by my husband Arthur with the casual detachment of someone discussing a grocery list, shattered the serene morning light filtering into my Brooklyn brownstone. Behind him, his pregnant sister Celeste stood, her swollen belly a grotesque emblem of their entitlement, a smirk playing on her lips as she surveyed the living room I had poured my soul into. Honestly, it would be a blessing if you were gone by the weekend. We need to start the nursery immediately. The antique silver spoon clattered from my hand, splashing lukewarm coffee onto the pristine white tablecloth. My chest felt hollowed out, a cavern where my heart used to beat, replaced by a glacial void. This brownstone, with its soaring ceilings, bespoke millwork, and the carefully curated art I'd collected over 3 decades, wasn't just a house. It was a monument to my resilience, a testament to the sweat, sleepless nights, and unwavering vision that had built Reed & Company. Designs into a name synonymous with luxury and innovation in the interior design world. Every square foot whispered stories of triumphs and sacrifices, each brick laid with my unwavering commitment to forging a life of beauty and independence. Now, it was being stolen, excuse me? The words felt like sandpaper in my throat, rough and foreign. Arthur, my husband of 7 years, didn't even bother to meet my gaze. He simply continued to butter his artisanal toast, the act a grotesque pantomime of normalcy amidst the wreckage of our life. Celeste, however, stepped further into the room, her hand resting protectively on her belly, her eyes already stripping my home bare. The garden level is perfect for your needs, Evelyn. Minimal distractions for all that work you do. Besides, she added, her voice saccharine, Arthur and I both agree the master suite offers the most space for the baby. And the attached bathroom is just essential for my morning sickness. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with a sudden, searing rage. At 57, I had built an empire most women of my mother's generation couldn't even dream of. Reed & Company. Designs employed 23 people who depended on my leadership, my relentless pursuit of perfection, my ability to transform forgotten spaces into breathtaking sanctuaries. Just that morning, I'd been finalizing a multi-million-dollar contract for a boutique hotel in Paris, a project that would cement my legacy. Now, I stood in the home I'd renovated with painstaking love, watching my husband, the man whose struggling art career I'd financially supported, whose gallery connections I'd cultivated, whose student loans I'd paid off after my first husband's passing, casually evict me from my own life. Arthur, I said, my voice dangerously low, this is my home. I own this brownstone. The deed is in my name. He finally looked up, his eyes cold and calculating, a stranger's gaze. We're married, Evelyn. That makes it our home. And family needs come first, especially with a baby on the way. Celeste glided past him, her fingers trailing along the custom built-in bookshelves I'd designed to house my collection of rare art and design monographs. These will be perfect for baby books and toys, she murmured, already erasing my presence, my passions, from the space. Behind her, her husband, Milo Thorne, drifted into view, carrying 2 designer suitcases. He wore one of those ethically sourced linen shirts that screamed conscious living but really just meant I refused to acknowledge the demands of a capitalist society. His man bun, precariously perched on his head, seemed to vibrate with an unearned self-importance. He offered me a dismissive nod, the kind you'd give a delivery person, polite but utterly devoid of recognition. I have a presentation for the Viridian Group at 2 o'clock, I stated, my voice sounding disembodied. We're finalizing the concept for their flagship Milan hotel. The entire executive board will be there. Then you'd better get packing quickly, Celeste chirped, her hand making those circular, nurturing motions on her belly that pregnant women seem genetically programmed to perform. We need to set up the nursery before my acupuncture appointment at 3. The sheer audacity of it crashed over me. This morning, I'd woken up as Evelyn Reed, owner of a $7 million brownstone, a woman whose latest project was featured in Architectural Digest, a visionary shaping the future of luxury design. Now, I was being instructed to pack my belongings like a recalcitrant teenager being kicked out of their college dorm. Arthur had returned to his toast, adding sliced avocado with the unwavering concentration of a surgeon. This was the same man who'd sworn to cherish me, who'd celebrated with vintage champagne when I'd landed my first international client, who'd made love to me in the very master bedroom they now claimed just last week. That gallery showing in Chelsea passed you over for the lead artist again, didn't it? The words slipped out before I could stop them, laced with a bitterness I hadn't known I possessed. His jaw tightened. That has nothing to do with this. But it had everything to do with this. For 3 years, Arthur had watched younger, less talented artists secure prestigious residencies, had attended social events where clients spoke of my latest projects first, his work second. He'd smiled through dinner conversations where industry peers raved about my feature in Forbes while he nursed his single malt in silence. He'd seen my success not as a shared triumph, but as a spotlight that perpetually dimmed his own. Mrs. Reed, Celeste now addressed me, her tone dripping with mock formality. The movers will need access to the master closet. Could you please leave your keys? Movers. They'd arranged movers before even telling me. My eyes fell on the design sketches for the Viridian Group, scattered on the polished oak floor, each one representing security for my employees, growth for my company, validation for every risk I'd ever taken. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant, * Viridian Group confirmed for 2 p.m. They're excited about the proposal, *, I have meetings, I said, though I wasn't sure who I was telling. I have obligations. Cancel them, Arthur suggested, finally biting into his perfectly prepared avocado toast. Or work from a hotel. You love hotels, remember? All those business trips. The accusation hung heavy in the air, unspoken but crystal clear. All those nights building my empire instead of playing the devoted wife. All those conferences, client dinners, and late-night strategy sessions that had paid for this Brownstone, his vintage sports car, the lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to. Milo had started measuring the living room with his phone app, probably calculating where their ethically sourced bean bags would go. My furniture, my carefully curated pieces from global artisans and renowned design fairs, each one a small victory, a tangible proof of my success, was being mentally reappropriated. The garden level, Arthur began, is a closet with a Murphy bed, I finished, my voice flat. It's temporary, he assured me, though his eyes suggested otherwise. Just until they get settled. Celeste laughed, a tinkling sound that scraped against my nerves. Oh, Arthur, stop pretending. We all know this is better for everyone. Evelyn's always working anyway. She barely uses this place. This home, where I'd installed a library of rare design books, where I'd created a sanctuary from the brutal world of high-stakes contracts, where I'd believed I was building a life with someone who valued me as more than a convenient bank account. My phone rang again. Dr. Alistair Finch's name appeared on the screen, the CEO of the Viridian Group, who'd been courting my firm for 6 months with an offer that would elevate Reed & Company to an entirely new echelon. I'd turned down similar offers 3 times in the past because Arthur had begged me to stay in Brooklyn, had promised we were partners, had sworn that our life here meant everything to him. I let it go to voicemail, though something in my chest shifted, like tectonic plates realigning before an earthquake. The silence that followed Dr. Finch's unanswered call stretched through the kitchen like spilled wine, staining everything it touched. I slipped my phone into my pocket, the weight of that missed opportunity settling against my hip. Celeste had moved to the bay windows, her silhouette against the morning light, calculating square footage with the precision of an appraiser. Milo, come look at this view, she called to her husband, who was still dragging luggage through my foyer. We could put the baby's meditation corner right here where the morning sun hits. My espresso machine, the one I'd imported from Florence after closing my first major hotel deal, caught her attention next. She ran her fingers along its polished chrome surface with the possessiveness of someone who'd already claimed ownership. The machine that had powered my early mornings, my late-night design sessions, my small ritual of control in chaotic days, was reduced to another item in her mental inventory. Milo finally emerged fully into view, his ridiculous bun catching the light. This space has incredible potential, he announced, as if his assessment mattered. Once we optimize the feng shui and create proper energy flow, it'll be perfect for raising a conscious child. A conscious child, in my Brownstone, that I purchased with money earned from solving complex design problems for multinational corporations, while Milo was probably attending drum circles and calling it networking. The movers will be here at noon, Celeste said, not to me, but to Arthur, as if I'd already ceased to exist in my own home. I've arranged for them to set up the nursery furniture in the master bedroom immediately. Nursery furniture? My voice cracked slightly. You've already bought nursery furniture? She turned to me with that patient expression people reserve for slow children or difficult employees. We've been planning this for months, Evelyn. Arthur didn't tell you? Months, the word hit me in the chest, a physical sensation that made me reach for the counter to steady myself. I looked at Arthur, searching his face for denial, for surprise, for anything that would suggest this wasn't the betrayal it appeared to be. But he was suddenly fascinated by the coffee grounds in the sink, scrubbing at them with the concentration of someone performing surgery. How many months? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Since we found out about the pregnancy, Milo supplied helpfully, apparently immune to the tension crackling through the room. 7 months ago. Celeste wanted everything perfect before announcing the move. 7 months of secret planning. 7 months of my husband plotting with his sister while sleeping beside me each night. 7 months of lies wrapped in regular mornings, ordinary dinners, and routine I love yous that meant nothing. Show me the garden level, I heard myself say, though the words felt foreign in my mouth. They actually smiled, all three of them, as if I'd finally come to my senses. Celeste led the way with the confidence of a tour guide, her designer flats clicking against my hardwood floors. Arthur followed, still avoiding my eyes, while Milo brought up the rear, typing on his phone with the urgency of someone with actual responsibilities. The walk down my hallway felt like a funeral procession. We passed my home office, where the Viridian group sketches still lay scattered on the floor. We passed the formal dining room, where I'd hosted countless industry dinners. We passed the powder room I'd meticulously designed with Venetian plaster and a custom vanity, my one indulgence after a particularly brutal year of building the business. Here we are, Celeste announced, pushing open the door to what had once been our storage room, then a cramped guest space. The area was maybe 8 by 10 feet, dominated by a Murphy bed that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. The single window faced the building's noisy HVAC system, a view of industrial gray machinery and piping. The carpet, God, I'd forgotten there was carpet in here, was a beige that had probably been installed when the Brownstone was first sectioned off decades ago. The smell hit me immediately, dust, old paint, and something else, something like defeat. It's perfect for your needs, Celeste said, and I wanted to ask her how she could possibly know what my needs were. Minimal distractions for all that work you do. Milo poked his head in, assessed the space, and nodded approvingly. Very zen. You could really create a meditation practice in here. A meditation practice, in a room that smelled of abandoned dreams and looked like a prison cell with better lighting. The bathroom is down the hall, Arthur finally spoke, his voice carefully neutral. You'll share it with guests when we have them. When we have them, already speaking in terms that excluded me from the hosting, from the very concept of this being my home, where will I put my clothes? I asked, noting the absence of a closet. There's a wardrobe in the basement storage, Celeste offered brightly. We could have it brought up. Very vintage, very authentic. I stood in the doorway of that pathetic room, my body blocking their exit, and felt something fundamental snap inside me. Not break. Breaking implied damage, weakness. This was more like a rope being cut, a tether being severed. The part of me that accommodated, that compromised, that made excuses for Arthur's ego and his family's treatment, it simply ceased to exist. I need to make some calls, I said, stepping aside to let them pass. Of course, Celeste chirped, already moving back toward the master bedroom, my bedroom. Take all the time you need. Within reason, of course. The movers will need access to everything. Arthur lingered for a moment, perhaps sensing the seismic shift in me, the absence of the wife who would normally argue, negotiate, try to find middle ground. But when I met his eyes, really looked at him for the first time since this ambush began, he flinched and hurried after his sister. I stood alone in that cramped room, listening to their voices drift from the other end of the brownstone. Celeste was describing where the crib would go, how they'd need to baby-proof the windows, how the walk-in closet would be perfect for all the baby supplies. My walk-in closet, where my bespoke suits hung in color-coded rows, where my designer shoes lined custom shelves, where I'd installed a full-length mirror that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. My phone buzzed. An email from my assistant about the afternoon presentation. Another from the Viridian group confirming our meeting. A text from my mother asking how my morning was going. The normal world continuing its rotation while mine had stopped, reversed, begun spinning in an entirely different direction. I walked to that pathetic window, looked out at the HVAC machinery, and made a decision. Not the emotional, reactive decision they probably expected, not the tearful acceptance they'd choreographed. Something else entirely. Something that would require the same strategic thinking I applied to designing the grandest hotels, except this time, I'd be redesigning my entire life. The sound of furniture being moved echoed from the master bedroom, my furniture, my life being rearranged to accommodate people who saw me as an inconvenience in my own home. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Dr. Alastair Finch's contact. My finger hovered over the call button as Celeste's laughter drifted down the hallway, bright, confident, victorious. The laugh of someone who believed she'd won, who couldn't imagine that evicting me might be the greatest mistake of her entitled life. My finger remained suspended over Dr. Finch's contact as the morning sun crept across the garden level's hideous carpet. Instead of calling, I set the phone aside and made a different decision. One that would change everything. If they wanted to play games with my life, I needed to understand the rules they'd been playing by. The brownstone was quiet at 6 o'clock in the morning. Celeste and Milo wouldn't surface before 10, people without real jobs rarely did. Arthur had left for his studio an hour ago, pecking my cheek with the mechanical precision of someone checking off a daily task. I padded barefoot through my home, feeling like an intruder in rooms I'd personally designed, and headed to my office where our shared desktop computer waited. Arthur had never been good with technology. His passwords were variations of his birth date and our anniversary, dates that apparently meant so little to him that using them for security felt appropriate. I opened his email, my fingers steady despite the betrayal I was about to uncover. The inbox loaded, and there it was, a folder labeled Family Matters. My stomach turned at the innocent-sounding name for what I instinctively knew would be anything but. The first email dated back 3 months. Celeste had written, "Artie, she won't fight us if we present it right. You know how Evelyn is. She hates scenes. Just tell her it's temporary, and she'll accept it." Arthur's response made my hands shake. "You're right. She has plenty of money anyway. Reed and Company is doing so well. She won't even notice the financial adjustment. Plus, she avoids confrontation like the plague. We can make this work. Financial adjustment like I was a budget line item to be optimized." I scrolled through weeks of planning, each message another cut. They'd discussed timing, waiting until after my biggest contract closed so I'd be too busy to resist properly. They'd strategized about the approach, sudden and decisive, giving me no time to mount a defense. Celeste had even researched tenant laws, concluding that as Arthur's wife, I had minimal rights if he chose to support his pregnant family member in need. One message from 2 weeks ago stopped my breathing entirely. Arthur had written, "I've been thinking about Evelyn's assets. She must have family money she hasn't mentioned. No one builds a business that fast without seed capital. Her first husband died years ago. There had to be life insurance. I'll do some digging." My phone rang, shattering the morning silence. My mother, Martha Reed's, picture appeared on the screen, a photo from last Christmas, her wearing the cashmere shawl I'd sent, smiling beside her small tree in Ohio. "Morning, Mom," I answered, trying to steady my voice. "Evelyn, honey, something strange happened yesterday." Her voice carried that worried tremor that appeared whenever she sensed trouble. "Arthur called me. He was asking about your first husband's insurance policy, wanting to know if there were investments we hadn't told him about." The room spun slightly. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, sweetheart. That your father and first husband's insurance barely covered their final medical bills and the funerals. You know that. We used every penny for their treatments. She paused, and I could picture her in her small kitchen, clutching her coffee mug with both hands. Why would Arthur ask about that after 7 years? He's confused about some financial planning, I lied smoothly. Don't worry about it. Evelyn, her voice sharpened with maternal intuition, what's really happening? You sound different. I couldn't tell her that her son-in-law was excavating our family tragedies for non-existent gold. That he was so certain I had hidden wealth, he was willing to disturb my grieving mother with questions about her deceased husband's finances. Everything's fine, Mom. I need to go. Early meeting. After hanging up, I returned to the emails, but my vision was blurring. Not with tears, those would come later, but with rage. Pure, crystalline rage that made everything suddenly clear. They hadn't just planned to take my home. They'd planned to inventory my entire life for assets they could claim. A new message appeared in Arthur's inbox as I watched, from Celeste. Asterisk, the movers are confirmed for noon. Once her stuff is in the garden level, phase 2 begins. Dad's lawyer says if she abandons the marital home, it strengthens Artie's position for the assets division. Asterisk, assets division. They were planning for a divorce I hadn't even contemplated, positioning me as the one who'd abandoned the marriage by leaving the home they were forcing me out of. I screenshot everything, emailing the evidence to my personal, secure account with the systematic thoroughness I applied to corporate audits. Then I cleared the browser history, let them think their secret remained safe. Back in the garden level, I opened my filing cabinet, searching for normal documents, but finding something else entirely. The Viridian Group International folder sat there like a beacon. Dr. Alistair Finch had pursued me for months, offering a position that would triple my current income, Chief Creative Officer for their global expansion, based in Milan, with a compensation package that included a stunning penthouse apartment overlooking the Duomo and a dedicated driver. I'd declined 6 months ago, sitting in this very brownstone, when it was still just my sanctuary. Arthur had stood behind me, his hands on my shoulders, telling me how much Brooklyn meant to us, how we were building something special here. Our life is here, Evelyn, he'd said. Our future is here. Our future. He'd already been talking to Celeste about moving her in when he'd said those words. The doorbell rang, interrupting my spiral into revelation. Beatrice stood in my doorway, my best friend since college, wearing her Pilates gear and an expression of barely contained fury. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the brownstone. She froze, seeing Milo's sound bath bowls scattered in my living room, Celeste's pregnancy affirmations taped to my refrigerator. By God, it's true. What's true? I already knew. Beatrice had connections everywhere, the gallery circuit, the charity boards, the invisible network of information that flowed through Manhattan and Brooklyn's upper echelons. I was at the opening last night, she said, her hands clenching. Celeste was holding court, telling anyone who'd listen how she'd finally put that career woman in her place. She said Arthur deserved better than a wife who thought she was so important. Said you were jealous of her pregnancy and that's why you had to be removed. Like a stain or an inconvenience. There's more, Beatrice continued, her voice dropping. She's been planning this since before she even announced her pregnancy. 7 months, Evelyn. She told her yoga group you'd probably try to claim mental instability from work stress, so they needed to act fast before you had a breakdown that would complicate things. I sank onto the Murphy bed, which groaned under even my slight weight. They'd pathologized my success, weaponized my work ethic, and transformed my achievements into evidence of instability. The precision of their character assassination was almost admirable. What are you going to do? Beatrice asked, sitting beside me. I looked at the Viridian Group folder, then at my phone, where the screenshots waited like loaded weapons. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, I said, and then I'm going to disappear with everything they never knew they needed. Beatrice squeezed my hand before leaving, her parting words echoing in the cramped garden level. Whatever you're planning, be careful. And if you need anything, money, a place to stay, an alibi, just call. After she left, I sat in that cramped space for exactly 5 minutes, allowing myself that small window of stillness before transforming into someone Celeste and Arthur had never met, a strategist who understood that revenge required the same meticulous planning as any corporate takeover. That afternoon, while Celeste hosted her prenatal doula in my living room and Milo conducted what he called a creative visioning session on my rooftop deck, I slipped out with my laptop bag and a story about an emergency client meeting. The lie came easily. After all, I'd been trained by experts in deception. My first stop was a quiet cafe 20 blocks away, where no one from Arthur's circle would venture. I opened my laptop and began creating what I would later think of as my war documents. Every receipt, every invoice, every bank statement from the last 7 years materialized from my cloud storage. The Brownstone's renovation alone had cost over $300,000, paid for with my earnings. The custom kitchen with its imported Italian marble, the bespoke cabinetry, the state-of-the-art appliances that Celeste was now filling with her organic pregnancy supplements. The documentation was overwhelmingly in my favor. The custom furniture from the Soho showroom? Mine. The smart home system that Arthur could never figure out how to operate, installed with my bonus from the Sterling account? Mine. Even the art on the walls, pieces I'd carefully collected from emerging artists who were now established names, all purchased with my money, all traceable through my business credit card. My phone buzzed. Dr. Alastair Finch's executive assistant, a wonderfully efficient woman named Clara, spoke with the kind of clarity that made complex things simple. Ms. Reed, Dr. Finch wanted me to confirm your acceptance of the Chief Creative Officer position. The contract is ready for your signature, and we can arrange for the relocation team to begin immediately. How immediately? I asked, watching a couple at the next table share a dessert, blissfully unaware that marriages could detonate without warning. We could have you in Milan within 2 weeks. The penthouse apartment is already vacant and furnished. Your signing bonus of $500,000 would be deposited upon contract execution. $500,000. Enough to start fresh without looking back, without begging, without compromising. Send the contract, I heard myself say. I'll sign it today. After ending the call, I sat in my car in the parking garage, staring at the concrete wall in front of me. This brownstone, where Arthur and I had lived for 7 years, suddenly felt like a tomb I'd been buried in alive. But now I could see daylight. Could feel the dirt shifting above me as I clawed my way out. The next morning, Tuesday, I met with Eleanor Chen. Not my lawyer friend, but my actual attorney, the one who'd helped me structure my business to protect it from exactly this kind of situation. Her office smelled of leather chairs and old money, the kind of place where devastating life changes were discussed in measured tones. The Brownstone deed is solely in your name, Evelyn, she confirmed, studying the documents I brought. Arthur insisted on that, didn't he? To protect his assets from your business liability. She smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. Ironic how that works out. As for the marital assets, given the clear premeditation and his attempts to undermine your financial stability, we have a very strong case for spousal abandonment and fraud if we were to pursue divorce proceedings. But for now, since he doesn't have a legal claim to the property itself, we can simply remove his access and belongings. Wednesday's mission was the money. I arrived at the boutique bank at 9 o'clock sharp, where my personal banker, Thomas Green, had been managing my accounts for over a decade. The joint account held exactly $3,457, groceries and utilities money. Everything else, the real money, sat in my business accounts that Arthur couldn't touch. I need to close the joint account and remove Arthur as a beneficiary from everything else, I told Thomas, who didn't even blink. In his line of work, he'd probably seen every version of marital destruction. Will you be needing new cards? He asked, fingers already flying across his keyboard. Everything new, I replied. New numbers, new passwords, new everything. The credit cards Arthur carried, the ones he used for his expensive lunches with clients, his gallery memberships, his monthly wine subscription, all cancelled with a few keystrokes. By the time he tried to use them, I'd be gone, and he'd have to explain to the waiter why his card was declined. Thursday brought the movers, not for the actual move that would come later, but for the assessment. I met Captain Lewis, the moving coordinator, at a climate-controlled storage facility in Queens, where they catalogued everything I planned to take. The list was extensive and precisely legal. Every item photographed, every receipt matched. Captain Lewis, a former military logistics officer, appreciated my thoroughness. Saturday morning, 8 o'clock sharp, he confirmed. 3 trucks, 20 men. We'll have you cleared out in 4 hours. That evening, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. The conversation I dreaded turned into something else entirely. "I'm leaving Arthur," I said simply. Finally, she exhaled, and I could hear years of bitten tongues in that single word. "That man never deserved you. Your father never liked him, said he had weak handshake energy." "Mom, I'm moving to Milan." Silence stretched between Ohio and Brooklyn. "Then, how soon?" 2 weeks. "I'll overnight you something," she said, and I could hear her moving through her house, opening drawers. "Your grandmother's brooch. She wore it when she left your grandfather. Did I ever tell you that story? Left him in 1952 when she caught him with his secretary. Took that brooch and her children and never looked back." Friday morning, the package arrived. The ornate amethyst brooch lay in its velvet box like a drop of regal twilight, accompanied by a note in my mother's careful cursive, *, wear this in Milan. New beginnings deserve old blessings. P.S. Your father left something else. Check the bottom of the box. * Beneath the velvet lining was a slim envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $50,000 and another note, * your dad's secret account. He always said it was for when you finally decided to fly. Consider this his permission to soar. * My father, dead 8 years, still protecting me. The tears came then, silent and steady, as I sat in that horrible garden level, clutching a brooch worn by women who'd refused to shrink themselves for anyone's comfort. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand, carefully placing the brooch back in its velvet box. The cashier's check felt surreal in my hands. My father, reaching across death itself to fund my escape. I tucked everything into my laptop bag, the one place in this prison where privacy still existed, and emerged from the garden level to find Celeste directing a catering team through my kitchen. "Oh, Evelyn, perfect timing," she chirped, not bothering to look at me while she pointed the delivery men toward my formal dining room. "We're having a little dinner party tonight. Nothing fancy, just some of Arthur's colleagues from the gallery. You don't mind, do you?" The question was rhetorical. She'd already arranged my sterling silver on the table, the set my grandmother had given me as a wedding gift. My Waterford crystal glasses caught the afternoon light, arranged with the precision of someone who'd been planning this performance for weeks. "Who's coming?" I asked, though the damage was already done. "The Millers, the Thompsons, that new curator Arthur's been trying to impress, Dr. Eleanor Vance. Maybe 12 people total." She finally looked at me, her hand making those endless circles on her belly. "You'll join us, won't you? Though perhaps you could eat in the kitchen. We're a bit tight on space." By 7 that evening, my Brownstone had transformed into Celeste's stage. She floated between guests in a flowing kaftan that emphasized her pregnancy while somehow maintaining an air of effortless elegance, accepting compliments on her new home with the practiced grace of someone who'd rehearsed every response. Arthur's gallery colleagues and their partners clustered in my living room, admiring the skyline view I'd paid for, the furniture I'd selected, the art I'd collected. "Celeste, this space is absolutely stunning," gushed Mrs. Miller, the influential art patron whose approval could make or break careers in the gallery world. "You have such exquisite taste." "Thank you so much," Celeste purred, her hand resting on my Danish sideboard. "We've worked so hard to make it perfect for the baby." I stood in the corner, holding a glass of sparkling water I couldn't bring myself to drink, watching this elaborate theft unfold in real time. Arthur moved through the room with unusual confidence, playing the successful host in a home he contributed nothing toward, occasionally glancing at me with something between warning and smugness. "Excuse me." Mrs. Thompson appeared at my elbow, her voice pitched low with confusion. "I'm sorry, but who are you? Are you with the catering team?" The room didn't go silent, but I felt the shift in attention, the subtle turn of heads, waiting for my response. Arthur started moving toward us, his face already arranging itself into an explanation. But I spoke first. I'm Evelyn Reed, Arthur's wife. I own this brownstone. Mrs. Thompson's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just assumed. Celeste seemed to be. It's an easy mistake, I said, my voice carrying just enough edge to make Arthur freeze mid-step. I'm staying in the garden level temporarily while Celeste and Milo prepare for their baby. The confusion rippling through the room was almost worth the humiliation. Almost. Mrs. Miller's sharp eyes moved between Celeste, Arthur, and me, calculating social dynamics with the precision of someone who'd navigated Brooklyn society for decades. How generous of you, she finally said, though her tone suggested she found it something else entirely. Celeste swooped in then, all gracious smiles and deflection. Evelyn's been so accommodating. She works such long hours anyway, the garden level is really more practical for her schedule. The evening deteriorated from there. I retreated to the kitchen under the pretense of checking on the caterers, but really to escape the suffocating performance of my own erasure. That's where Milo found me an hour later, organic rose flushing his cheeks and loosening his already minimal filter. You know, you're really lucky, he slurred, leaning against my refrigerator with the confidence of someone who'd never been told he was unwelcome. Celeste wanted you gone completely. Day 1, out on the street. How fortunate for me. I managed, watching him sway slightly. But Arthur, smart man. He said, no, no, no. Milo wagged his finger for emphasis. He said, we need her rent money for a few more weeks, just until the next bonus cycle. Then he made a gesture like tossing garbage. Then you can go. The words landed exactly as intended. Not like a revelation, but like confirmation of what I'd already suspected. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being financially drained first, squeezed for every last dollar before being discarded. Interesting, I said, filing this confession away with all the other evidence I'd been collecting. Milo grabbed an open bottle of wine from the counter, a $300 Barolo I'd been saving for something special, and poured himself another glass. Celeste's got it all figured out. Always has. Even before, he stopped himself, suddenly aware he might be saying too much. Before what? I prompted, but he was already shuffling back toward the party, muttering about finding his wife. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and strategic avoidance. I watched Celeste hold court in my living room, watched Arthur accept congratulations on his beautiful home, watched my life being rewritten in real time with me cast as barely a footnote. Then, at precisely 10:30, Celeste's hand flew to her stomach. Oh, she gasped, loud enough to halt conversations. Oh no, Arthur, something's wrong. The performance was magnificent. Arthur rushed to her side. Guests parted like the Red Sea, and within minutes, they were heading for the door. Celeste leaning heavily on her brother while insisting she didn't want to worry anyone. Evelyn will handle cleanup. Arthur called over his shoulder. Won't you, darling? The door closed on their manufactured emergency, leaving me with Milo, 12 confused guests, and the wreckage of a dinner party I hadn't thrown. Mrs. Miller lingered, her keen eyes taking in the scene with the clarity of someone who'd witnessed plenty of marital disasters. Interesting evening, she said carefully, then leaned closer. I knew your father, you know, before he passed. He would not have tolerated this. She left before I could respond, but her words stayed as I spent the next 2 hours cleaning up. Milo sprawled on my sofa, asking periodically if I could bring him water or perhaps something to eat. The cramps, I knew, would miraculously resolve the moment Arthur confirmed I'd handled everything. At 2:00 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Beatrice had sent a series of screenshots that made my blood turn to ice. Celeste's private Instagram, the one she thought was secure, told a different story than the one they'd been selling. Posts from months ago showed my brownstone, cannot wait to raise our baby here, dated 2 weeks before she'd announced her pregnancy to Arthur. Planning the nursery in our new home, from 6 weeks ago. So grateful everything is falling into place from 3 months back. This wasn't opportunistic. This was premeditated, calculated, executed with the precision of a heist. And I'd been marked from the beginning. I stared at Beatrice's screenshots until my eyes burned. The timestamp showing 2:47 a.m. Milo was now snoring on my sofa, his empty wine glass tipped sideways on my coffee table, leaving a ring that would normally have sent me scrambling for a coaster. Instead, I left it there, a small rebellion, and walked to my bedroom window. The city sparkled below, indifferent to the quiet devastation of marriages, and I made my final decision. Saturday would be my Independence Day. I barely slept, running through logistics in my mind with the precision I usually reserved for multi-million-dollar design projects. At 5 a.m., I rose, showered in the garden-level bathroom with its inconsistent water pressure, and dressed carefully. Black slacks, white silk blouse, and around my neck my grandmother's amethyst brooch, the outfit of someone conducting serious business. By 7:45 a.m., I stood in the lobby, watching through the glass doors as 3 large moving trucks turned onto our street. The building superintendent, Mr. Henderson, who'd witnessed 7 years of my marriage, gave me a knowing nod. "Big day, Mrs. Reed." "The biggest, Mr. Henderson," I replied, "and it's Ms. Reed now." At exactly 8 a.m., 20 movers flooded through the entrance with the coordinated precision of a military operation. Captain Lewis, the lead coordinator, approached with his clipboard and a team of professionals who knew exactly what they were doing. I provided floor plans, photographs, and itemized lists. Every piece tagged with colored dots, green for take, red for leave. The red items were few: Arthur's vintage arcade cabinet, the garden-level Murphy bed, and a macrame wall hanging Celeste had brought from her old apartment. "We'll start with the large furniture," Captain Lewis confirmed. "Work our way down to boxes. 3 hours, maybe 4. "Perfect." I handed him an envelope. "Coffee and pastries are in the truck outside for your team. They'll need the energy." The elevator began its steady rhythm. Up empty, down full. My sectional sofa went first, the custom-made piece I'd ordered from Italy after landing the sterling account. Then the custom dining table where just hours ago Celeste had held court with Arthur's colleagues. Each piece that disappeared felt like removing a tumor, necessary and overdue. The noise finally penetrated the Saturday morning stillness. Milo appeared first, shuffling out in silk pajamas that probably cost more than most people's rent, his man bun completely askew. What's happening? Why are there people here?" "I'm moving out," I said simply, checking off items on my list as movers carried my bespoke bookshelf past us. "Celeste suggested I should leave by the weekend, remember?" "I'm simply taking her advice." His face went through a series of expressions as his hungover brain tried to process the scene. Then he saw them carrying the 85-inch OLED television I'd bought myself for Christmas, and something finally clicked. Wait. You can't take that. We use that." "You use things I paid for," I corrected. "There's a difference between using and owning." Celeste's entrance was more dramatic. She flew out of what was once my bedroom, now apparently their bedroom, wearing a silk robe that gaped over her pregnant belly, her face twisted in outrage. "Stop. Stop right now. You can't do this." Captain Lewis and his team didn't even pause. They'd been well briefed on the possibility of hysterics. "You can't take everything." Celeste's voice hit a pitch that made several movers wince. "This is insane. This is theft." I pulled out my phone, swiping to the folder I'd meticulously prepared. "Would you like to see the receipts?" The sofa, purchased March 2021, paid from my business account. The dining table, December 2020, my annual bonus. The kitchen appliances, I looked up at her with the sweetest smile I could manage. "All mine, every single piece." "But we live here," she sputtered, watching as movers wrapped my artwork in protective blankets. "You live in a space I'm no longer paying for," I clarified. "How you choose to furnish it is your concern." Arthur emerged last, and the sight of him almost made me laugh. His hair stood at strange angles, yesterday's shirt incorrectly buttoned, his face puffy from wine and sleep. He took in the scene, the empty living room, the bare walls, his sister near tears, and his expression cycled through confusion, comprehension, and finally, panic. Evelyn, we need to talk about this. We needed to talk before you ambushed me with your sister's invasion. That window has closed. Let's be reasonable, he said, the phrase he always used when he wanted me to capitulate. This is extreme. Extreme. I watched as movers carried our bed frame past us. The California king, where he'd made promises he'd never intended to keep. Extreme was suggesting I move to the garden level. This is just practical. Where are we supposed to sleep? He actually sounded bewildered, as if furniture appeared magically without someone purchasing it. That sounds like a you problem, Arthur. Perhaps Milo's creative consulting can manifest a solution. Celeste had moved to tears now, her hand pressed to her belly in that protective gesture that had worked so many times before. How can you do this to a pregnant woman? To your family? Family? The word tasted bitter. Family doesn't exile family to storage rooms. Family doesn't plan secret coups for 7 months. Family doesn't treat each other like unwanted tenants in their own homes. Captain Lewis approached, his expression carefully neutral. Ms. Reed, we're almost done. Just the kitchen items and your office furniture. Arthur. Celeste grabbed her brother's arm, her voice urgent. Do something. Call someone. This can't be legal. Oh, it's completely legal, I said, pulling out the documentation Eleanor Chen had prepared. Every item being removed was purchased by me, with my money, from my accounts. The receipts are all here. Would you like copies for your records? The movers were efficient, systematic, thorough. My espresso machine, the one Celeste had been using every morning, disappeared into a box. The smart home system got disconnected, leaving them with basic switches and manual controls. Even the expensive water filter I'd installed, gone. As the last boxes loaded, I looked around the empty brownstone. The space looked massive without furniture, hollow and echoing. Celeste stood in what was once our living room, tears streaming down her face. Milo had his phone out, probably trying to figure out how to spin this on Instagram. Arthur stood frozen, still processing. One more thing, I said, pulling out the final document. The deed. I held the Brownstone deed in my hand, watching Arthur's face drain of color as he recognized the letterhead from the city's property records office. This deed is in my name alone, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. You insisted on it, remember? To protect your assets from any potential business liability. The building management has already been notified that as of Monday, you're trespassing. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. The words hung in the empty brownstone like a death sentence. Arthur's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. Celeste clutched her belly, but even that gesture had lost its power. Milo stood frozen, his phone still raised as if documenting this moment could somehow change its reality. 48 hours? Celeste's voice cracked. But where will we go? That's no longer my concern. I turned toward the door where Captain Lewis waited with the final inventory sheet for my signature. You wanted me gone by the weekend. Consider your wish granted. The elevator ride down felt like ascending from hell into daylight. Mr. Henderson held the lobby door open as I walked through for the last time as Mrs. Vance, and I heard him murmur, "Well done, ma'am." My car was already packed with essential items, clothes, documents, and my grandmother's amethyst brooch, still warm against my throat. The drive to JFK Airport took exactly 53 minutes, during which my phone rang continuously. I'd switched it to silent, but the screen lit up with name after name, Arthur, Celeste, Milo, and then, surprisingly, Arthur's mother, Eleanor. Eleanor Vance, the woman who'd spent 7 years treating me like an interloper at family dinners, who'd repeatedly asked Arthur when he was going to find someone more suitable, was suddenly desperate to reach the unsuitable daughter-in-law she'd never wanted. I waited until I was seated in the first-class lounge, a glass of champagne in hand, before listening to the voicemails. They played like a symphony of desperation, each movement more frantic than the last. Arthur's first message attempted authority. Evelyn, this is ridiculous. Call me back immediately so we can sort this out like adults. His fifth message had devolved to pleading, please, we need to talk. You can't just leave us with nothing. This is your home, too. Celeste's messages were pure hysteria, you can't do this. We have nowhere to go. Think about the baby. How can you be so heartless? Milo had managed only one confused message, hey, Evelyn, could you at least tell us how the smart home system works? We can't figure it out. But Eleanor's message was the most revealing, Evelyn, dear, there seems to be some misunderstanding. Arthur needs you to be reasonable. The family reputation is at stake here. Call me back immediately. The family reputation. Not concern for my well-being, not acknowledgement of the betrayal. Just worry about how this would look at the gallery openings. 3 hours into my flight to Milan, while I was somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, my phone connected to the plane's Wi-Fi, and the messages resumed with renewed intensity. But it was Monday morning's call from Celeste that provided the most satisfaction. I was settling into my new penthouse apartment, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Duomo, when her number appeared on my screen. This time, I answered, Arthur said you have a trust fund, she sobbed without preamble. He said there was inheritance money, family money you were hiding. Where is it, Evelyn? We need it. I set down my coffee, made with a simple machine that didn't require an engineering degree to operate, and let her words hang between continents. Celeste, there is no trust fund. There never was. You're lying. Her voice pitched higher, desperation making her shrill. Arthur said your first husband left money. He said you had investments, hidden accounts. My first husband left medical bills and a modest life insurance policy that barely covered his final expenses, I said calmly. Every penny you've been living on, every piece of furniture you've been using, every luxury you've enjoyed, it all came from Reed & Company. Designs. The business Arthur called my little hobby at dinner parties. Silence. Then, but Arthur promised. He said once you were gone, we'd have access to money that never existed, I finished. He lied to you, Celeste. Or maybe he lied to himself so thoroughly he believed it. Either way, you've been conned by your own brother. The sound she made wasn't quite crying, wasn't quite screaming, something primal and defeated. We have nothing. We have nowhere to go. The landlord locked us out this morning. Arthur's credit cards don't work. We're sitting in Milo's car with our suitcases. That sounds difficult, I said, surprising myself with the absence of satisfaction I'd expected to feel. Instead, there was just emptiness, a hollow where my marriage used to live. By Tuesday, the complete collapse had begun. Beatrice, ever my faithful intelligence network, called with updates. Arthur had been forced to explain to his colleagues why he'd suddenly lost his prestigious address. The story spread through his gallery circles like wildfire, how he tried to steal his successful wife's home and ended up homeless himself. The Millers, whose dinner party had been the final humiliation, were particularly vocal in their disapproval. Dr. Vance, that new curator Arthur was trying to impress? She's telling everyone, Beatrice reported with barely concealed glee. The whole art scene knows Arthur was essentially a kept man who bit the hand that fed him. Celeste and Milo had found emergency housing in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, a far cry from the Brooklyn brownstone she'd commandeered. Her Instagram had gone dark. The carefully curated lifestyle she'd documented now impossible to maintain. The baby's nursery she'd planned in my bedroom would now be a corner of a cramped space that probably smelled of other people's cooking and had windows facing a brick wall. Arthur had moved back to his parents' house in Connecticut, a 53-year-old man returning to his childhood bedroom with nothing but wounded pride and empty promises. Eleanor, I heard through mutual acquaintances, was mortified, her successful artist son reduced to a cautionary tale about greed and ingratitude. Wednesday evening, Milan time, I finally called my mother. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone since I'd left Brooklyn. Tell me you're safe, she said without preamble. I'm safe, Mom. I'm in Milan. I got the job, the apartment, everything. The silence on the other end of the phone stretched for a moment before my mother exhaled, a sound that carried 7 decades of wisdom and worry. "Good," she finally said. "And Arthur, the family?" "They're managing," I replied, which was generous considering what I knew about their circumstances. 3 months had passed since that Saturday morning exodus, and Milan had become more than just an escape. It had become home. My office at the Viridian Group occupied a corner of the 32nd floor with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing a view of the Duomo that still made me pause during conference calls. The space was mine to design, and I'd chosen clean lines, warm woods, and a single piece of art, a painting by a local artist that reminded me of new beginnings. My team of 30 professionals treated me with the kind of respect I'd forgotten existed. They called me Ms. Reed, not because protocol demanded it, but because they genuinely valued my expertise. During meetings, when I spoke, people took notes. When I suggested strategies, they were implemented. There was no subtle undermining, no whispered comments about aggressive women. No need to soften my competence to protect fragile egos. The apartment the Viridian Group had provided exceeded every expectation. 23rd floor, 2 bedrooms, though I lived alone. A kitchen where I cooked whatever I wanted without commentary. And a living room I'd furnished exactly to my taste. No committee decisions, no negotiations about color schemes, no justifying why I preferred modern over traditional. Every morning I woke to sunlight reflecting off the historic city, made coffee in peaceful silence, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, contentment. My phone dinged with an email notification. The sender made me pause, Arthur Vance. The subject line read, "Please read, important." I almost deleted it immediately, but curiosity won. 6 pages of dense text filled my screen. A rambling manifesto of regret, self-pity, and transparent manipulation. "I'd been in therapy," he wrote, as if 2 months of counseling could undo 7 years of diminishment. "I understand now how I failed you. How I let family dynamics cloud my judgment. We had something special, Evelyn. We could have that again." The delusion was breathtaking. He wrote about our early days, conveniently editing out his constant need to be the more successful one, his subtle sabotage of my ambitions, his family's treatment of me as an outsider. He mentioned marriage counseling, communication workshops, even suggested I could keep my Milan job and commute. The logistics alone were laughable, 15-hour flights for a marriage that had been dead long before Celeste arrived. "I know you're angry," one paragraph read. "But anger fades. Love remains." Love, he'd chosen his sister over his wife. Conspired to steal my home. Tried to drain my bank accounts. And now he spoke of love like he understood the concept. I forwarded the entire message to Eleanor Chen, my lawyer, with a single line, *, please add to harassment documentation. No response needed, *. The rest of the story reached me through professional networks and Beatrice's detailed intelligence reports. Celeste had delivered a healthy baby girl 2 weeks ago. The Instagram announcement was sparse, a single photo in what was clearly a cramped apartment. No designer nursery, no professional photography. The caption read simply, "Welcome to the world, Isabella." The comment section, Beatrice noted with satisfaction, was notably thin. The society crowd had moved on to fresher scandals. Milo, according to LinkedIn, was now a freelance spiritual wellness consultant, which translated to unemployed but unwilling to admit it. His last post about exciting new ventures had 3 likes, all from family members. The sound bath video that had been his claim to fame was buried so deep in his profile that new visitors would never find it, but Arthur's fall had been the most complete. His gallery had conducted a restructuring that eliminated his position. Corporate speak for, "Your scandal embarrassed us and you need to leave." He'd updated his LinkedIn to "seeking new opportunities," but an artist's reputation was everything. Who would buy from an artist who tried to orchestrate his own wife out of her home? Beatrice called one evening while I was preparing dinner, a simple pasta I could make exactly how I liked it, with no one complaining about garlic or suggesting improvements. "You'll never guess who I saw at Whole Foods," she said without preamble. Eleanor Vance, buying generic brands and looking like she'd aged 10 years. Arthur living with his parents, a man who'd spent years cultivating an image of success now dependent on the charity of parents who'd expected him to be their retirement plan, not the other way around. And get this, Beatrice continued. Margaret Thompson told me that Celeste applied for a job at Nordstrom, in retail, full-time. Can you imagine? The woman who acted like employment was beneath her, folding clothes for women who used to attend her parties. I stirred my pasta, feeling an emotion I couldn't quite name. Not satisfaction exactly, not pity either. Something more complex, like watching a building you once lived in being demolished, necessary, but tinged with the memory of what it once meant. That night, unable to sleep, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Milan skyline. The city pulsed with life below, a place where no one knew me as Mrs. Vance, where my success wasn't threatening, where I could build something entirely my own. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother, * your grandmother would be proud. You didn't just leave a bad situation. You built something better, * she was right. They'd wanted me gone, erased from their picture like an inconvenient detail. But in removing me, they'd removed the foundation everything else rested on. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd simply stopped propping them up. The tears that came then weren't for Arthur, for the marriage that had died, or even for the years I'd wasted trying to make myself smaller. They were tears of relief, of recognition, of finally understanding that walking away wasn't giving up. It was the greatest victory of all. It was the moment I claimed my future, unburdened and truly free. If the story of betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming your power resonated with you, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Evelyn, calm as a spring morning, handed Arthur the deed to her brownstone, watching his face drain of color as he realized he was the one being evicted from a life he never earned. What was your favorite moment of justice, that instant where you felt Evelyn's strength shine through? Drop it in the comments below, and let's celebrate the power of women who refuse to be silenced or diminished. Don't miss more gripping stories of triumph over adversity. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload that reminds you how truly powerful you are.